Hi guys, Ryu here, and let's talk about Ngons. What is an Ngon? It's very simple. Ngon is any type of face that has more than 4 vertices. Because 3 is a triangle, 4 is a quad, and more than 4, so 5 plus, is an Ngon. So for example, even though you see a quad in here, this is already an Ngon because I just added one more vert. Now, why Ngons have such a bad reputation? And is it actually really deserved? Well, there are myths and truth about Ngons. The myth is that Ngons are always bad, and the truth is that Ngons are sometimes bad. But the same thing goes to quads. Quads are sometimes good, and quads also are sometimes unnecessary. Now let me show you what I mean. See, if I try to subdivide this mesh by using a loop tool, right? So just inserting a loop, I cannot do it because Blender sees that this is an Ngon and here is an Ngon on top as well and doesn't really know which way this edge should flow. But if I remove this and try to insert a loop, everything is fine. So quads can be very easily subdivided. So if you wanted to subdivide the mesh, you're probably gonna go ahead with a subdivision modifier, which is here, which will simply subdivide this mesh. So let me show you this on an example of a plane, okay? So if I went to grab a plane, put it in here and go to a top view, and then I'm going to right click and subdivide it and press Shift R to repeat that operation, okay? That's what subdivision is, okay? Just simply subdivides this quad into many more quads. If that was an Ngon, a subdivision wouldn't work that well. And you see these areas, right? They were subdivided really densely. Let me switch off the X-ray effect. You see these subdivisions here? That was a mesh which was simply subdivided into smaller quads to support this this curvature. And when this mesh is gonna get, triangulated and exported to a game engine, shading is gonna be perfectly fine. These Ngons, the small ones here, right? These are Ngons. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. They do not matter because it's so tiny, and the curvature they lay on is so minuscule that it literally will have no effect on shading. So now when you create Ngons, right, when you use Ngons, you need to know how to use them. For example, here is a very good example, right? If I go to edit mode, you see, this is an Ngon, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vertices. Now this would be tricky if you bring it to game engine because it actually lays on a curve. So I would need to probably, if I wanted to bring it to a game engine, would need to make sure that game engine properly triangulates this mesh, or I would need to actually run some supporting loops here and cut this Ngon to something smaller and more digestible. Okay. However, in this case, if you were, for example, working on a, on like a concept project, right? It doesn't matter because, shading is perfectly fine. You see, there's no problem with shading in here, and it's an Ngon. And there are plenty of examples like this on this flat surface here, right? And this one. This Ngon doesn't matter because it's a flat surface. There will be no point of creating additional loops and edges because it would add unnecessary geometry that literally this mesh doesn't need. So again, you need to understand that Ngons are perfectly fine on flat surfaces that will not deform, or curved surfaces when you know that you can control the shading when you're using them. Quads are usually great anywhere. However, if you use two big quads on very, aggressive curves, you're gonna have the same problem and the same shading breaking. In addition, trying to make geometry all quads is unnecessary in a lot of cases in hard surface modeling, especially if you're not going to subdivide the mesh. So if you know, you need to know what this mesh is gonna, what kind of purpose the mesh is gonna serve. If you know you're gonna subdivide it, you might have a problem with Ngons. If you know that you do not need to subdivide it, you're perfectly fine. And again, flat surfaces, you're fine. Curved surfaces, you got to be careful. Surfaces that deform, I would probably avoid Ngons. or make sure that the shading looks fine after bringing it to the game engine. So you need to actually test it yourself. The trick is to learn how to control the shading, know what, how the geometry behaves. If you look at this mesh, I mean, these are all slices. This is, these are not decals. These are literally sliced meshes, okay? This is all sliced, all of it, okay? These are all separate pieces. So they're all booleans. And booleans create a lot of Ngons. This is a boolean too, right? This is a real geo. This is a real geo, these are real geos, right? It's all is sliced, okay? So it's really not a problem if you use Ngon, if you really know how to use them. Look, the shading is really nice here. It's perfect. It's, it's flawless. But I guarantee you there are Ngons on this bit because, it's unavoidable. It's a boolean, so you will have Ngons, but they're perfectly fine, because again, mesh is dense enough to support it. So when you create something and you want to use Ngons, always make sure that you know what purpose these Ngons gonna serve. And that's all about Ngons from me. Thanks for watching.